Pitch on the way to Garvey. Hit high to right center field. Way back. Going. In it. Gone. The Padres win it.
It's time for the 10th inning.
Gibson swings and a fly ball to deep right field. This is going to be a home run. Unbelievable.
Put me in cold. I'm ready to play today. Put me in cold. I'm ready to play today. Look at me. I can be center field.
Welcome to the 10th inning. I'm Nick Mattos, and today we're going to preview the College National Championship game between the number one ranked and defending national champions, the Alabama Crimson Tide. And returning to face the Alabama Crimson Tide are the Clemson Tigers, who Bama defeated 45-40 in last season's national championship game. Joining me today to break down the game is my co-host on Overtime with Nick and Bob, and affectionately known as the P of I, Bob Seymour, and from San Diego sports leader, the mighty 1090, and co-host of College Football Game Day, Saturday mornings 10 to 12:30, is Danny Reiter. Well, gentlemen, the semifinals were played last Saturday, December 31st. Alabama defeated Washington 24-7, and Clemson shut out the Ohio State Buckeyes 31-0. Bobby, you really liked the Clemson Tigers, and boy, they put one over on the Ohio State Buckeyes.
Oh, yes, they did. And once again, and kind of as I mentioned when we talked about this before in the first podcast, I thought Brent Venables and the defensive staff did a huge job. The front seven just basically dominated the game. Ohio State was never able to generate any offense. They pretty much shut down J.T. Barrett. They basically kind of daring J.T. Barrett to beat him. They shut down Calvin Samuels. The other thing I thought on the offensive side of the football, I thought they won the battle on first down repeatedly. They were in second and short and third and short almost the whole night. They were getting 7-8 yards on first down almost in every place. I mean, in every series. So, yeah, it was a great effort for Clemson. A little bit surprised at how much they did dominate Ohio State, because I think Danny talked about it, and we talked about it in the last podcast. Urban Meyer's, I think Danny said he belonged on the Mount Rushmore of coaches. He's a great coach. They had 3 weeks to prepare, just like Clemson. They weren't able to get it done. So, kudos to Dabo Swinney, Brett Venables, the whole Clemson staff. Now it's time to go get after Alabama.
Yeah, Danny, I'm sure you were very disappointed in Ohio State. You had predicted that Ohio State would defeat Clemson, and Bob and I both thought that the Clemson Tigers may have a better front seven, and they would be able to take advantage of the offensive line for the Ohio State Buckeyes. What are your thoughts, Danny, on the game?
Well, I thought, frankly, both playoff games were pretty boring. But I thought the thing that stood out to me the most in this one was I think Clemson played their best game all year. And we talked in the last podcast, they've been inconsistent. You didn't know when you were going to get their best, but when you get their best, they can win it all. And they proved that they could win it all by just thoroughly dominating Ohio State. I think it really goes to them, like Bob said. I think their D-line was just chasing J.T. Barrett the whole game. He never had any time to throw it. Samuels couldn't get anything going on the ground. And we knew that Ohio State had a questionable O-line, but it just was really exposed. And I think part of what hurt them was those first two possessions where they had the interception in Clemson territory and they missed a field goal, and then later they get a good kick return to set them up well and they miss another field goal. And I'm not saying they would have won the game if they made those, but I think that really stymied their rhythm offensively, and I think they never recovered from there. And their defense did all they could to try to keep them in it, but they just never got anything going. Clemson was chasing them the whole game, and it was just the Tigers just thoroughly outplayed them. I think the one positive you can take for Ohio State is they're a young team. J.T. Barrett already said he's coming back next year. They can easily make another run next season. I think Clemson was just the better team, and they proved it in that game.
Danny, you had mentioned in our previous podcast that you thought that the kryptonite for Ohio State could be they were very young, Dan. And in the game, they looked like they were feeling a lot of pressure about the importance of the game. And Bob, did you feel that? Because I absolutely thought Ohio State was just the moment was just a little big for a lot of the young players.
Well, I think it echoes what Danny's saying. I mean, they had two big plays early and really couldn't capitalize, and I think that kind of just they lost all their momentum. They lost everything, and I think as the game wore on, Clemson wore them down more and more. I think you could just see it in their eyes that it was not going to end well for them. So yeah, I think youth played a factor in it, and certainly getting behind and then staying behind and not really being able to generate any offense, watching your quarterback run all over the place, getting chased by the guys in the orange jerseys. Yeah, it had to be a little bit of a demoralizing situation for them, and I think even Urban Meyer was surprised by how badly things went for them on last Saturday.
Well, I was very impressed with Deshaun Watson. I thought, he didn't win the Heisman Trophy this year, but he just really stepped up in the big game there, and he threw for 259 yards. He ran for 57 yards. He scores 2 TDs and passes for 1. To me, he was the brightest offensive star in the game. And Danny, I think this young man has a future in the NFL, and I'm interested to see how he's going to do Monday night against Alabama. Again, he gets that opportunity to play for the national championship, and they came up just a little short last year, 45-40 in that game. And I really think this is a game that Clemson has focused on since the loss last year. And this young man is really playing well. And, we saw Alabama defeat Washington, but I wasn't that impressed with the freshman quarterback. And I know he's only a freshman, Dan, but I really think there might be a huge advantage for Clemson in the quarterback position in the national championship game.
Well, I think
for Clemson,
7 yards. Go ahead, Danny.
I was going to say, for Clemson to win this game, it's going to be, to beat Alabama, it's going to be about their offense, in my opinion. Because, Deshaun Watson, yeah, he put up some good numbers against Ohio State, but he still threw multiple interceptions. And if you do that against Alabama, you're playing into their hands. They've had multiple defensive touchdowns. The one thing for Clemson is when they play that well, they can compete. But can they do that against Alabama, who's been the best team all year, has been historically great? And that's going to be the big question mark. I definitely think that they have focused on this game, but some would argue they were a better team last year, Clemson. They were undefeated. They had played a brutal schedule, but it really played well offensively. Watson was much more efficient with the ball. The one plus that they have this year, unlike last year, is Mike Williams at receiver. He was out basically the whole season. I think he got hurt in the first game. If they can get something going offensively and put pressure on Alabama's offense to make plays, I think they can pull this out. And we talked about Ohio State real quick. They actually are already looking to get Kevin Wilson, I believe, the former Indiana football head coach, to be their new OC. So Urban Meyer is quick at work to try to fix what went wrong.
Well, Alabama defeated Washington 24-7 in the Peach Bowl, and Bob, you, I, and Danny all thought that Alabama would roll over Washington. And Dan, I loved it when you guys said down there in the mighty 1090 that, lay the points with Alabama and they'll cover. And sure enough, the point spread was 14 in that game, Danny, and they win it by 17. So we were all glad we put the money on Alabama like you had suggested, right, fellas?
Oh, yeah. Hurts only threw for 57 yards in that win, though. I mean, they didn't really have a lot of offense. And I think that game turned when Browning threw that interception for a pick six. I mean, they were still in that game, and then Browning makes a stupid play. They take it to as Danny pointed out, for their 10th or 11th touchdown on defense this season, and game over for pretty much for Washington at that point. And getting back to Danny, getting back to Clemson for a second, in the upcoming game against Alabama, I think one of the turning points, and Danny talked about offense for Clemson with Deshaun Watson. Yes, he did have a couple more turnovers in that game on New Year's Eve, and turnovers have been kind of his. I think he threw 15 interceptions this year, but I think it's going to also depend on Clemson's offensive line to control that front seven of Alabama's, because we know they have the Outland Trophy. They have the Benedict winner in Jonathan Allen. They have the Butkus winner in Reuben Foster. They have quality players on defense. Can Clemson's offensive line do the same things that they did last week against Ohio State, or even get a stalemate against because Alabama's got heck of defense. So I think it's going to come down to the offensive line, giving Watson the opportunity to make plays, giving Wayne Gallup the opportunity to get some running plays. Getting back to Mike Williams, he did miss all last season with a broken neck. He's a monster player, 6'3", 225 pounds, great hands. He has the ability to make the 50-50 ball plays. So I think but the key is going to be, can they keep Watson upright? Can they maintain against that Alabama defense? Because it is going to come down to Clemson having to put points on the board, I believe.
Yeah, agreed. And especially with Alabama, I mean, we talked about Jalen Hurts, and he didn't throw the ball a lot, but Bo Scarborough was just a beast running the ball. I mean, they ran the ball very effectively throughout that game. And I give Washington's defense credit. They really kept them in the game. And you made the point, Bob, about the pick six, and I think that was killer because that's really been the issue with Browning in these big games. He suddenly starts turning it over and making big mistakes. But I felt the big play that changed it, when the game was 7-7 after Alabama tied it, Washington still seemed to have some offensive rhythm, and John Ross had a fumble after getting a nice effort for a first down. And I think that, I mean, I'm not going to say they get that, they win the game. It's just kind of like with Ohio State. But I think that stymied their rhythm, and you saw they never recovered yet again. I mean, you make mistakes like that. Football can be a really momentum-driven game, and especially against defenses like Alabama and Clemson, if you don't take advantage of those opportunities given to you, it'll cost you. And that's what happened to Washington, unfortunately, and they just kept digging a deeper and deeper hole. And, you know, the pick six definitely gave Alabama the separation they needed. And you give that team separation, it just makes it even harder to try to beat them.
Right. I mean,
Very good, Dan.
And as you pointed out, Brian is forced to throw. He's not throwing the ball very well. And then the front seven's cut loose on him. So, yeah, it just makes for a long day at the end. But at the end of the day, it makes for a long day. So.
Very good. Well, but fellas, I'll tell you, I wasn't impressed. I mentioned earlier Jalen Hurts, the freshman quarterback, 7 for 14, 57 yards, 19 rushes for 50 yards, and he was sacked 3 times. But I think there may be a couple of glaring things that I think may turn the tide this year and give Clemson – you like that, fellas? Turn the tide? Okay, whatever. We're trying to get a little laugh out of my audience, but not getting any. But, fellas, Bama had 10 penalties for 66 yards. And, Danny, you know, you had talked to me about this off air, and we got a little cut here about they lost their offensive coordinator, Lane Kiffin. So, Dave, why don't you roll this, and we'll talk a little bit about this. Nick Saban here talking about it.
In the best interest of everyone, that this would be the best thing for us to do relative to, you know, what the experience that we had in preparation for Washington and playing in the game. So, you know, I don't think there's a whole lot more to say about that. Our coaches are working hard to try to put the best game plan we can together to play against a very good Clemson, you know, defense. And, you know, we're in the planning stages right now, so I don't know why you all keep asking me what changes we're going to make. You know, Dabo's a good friend of mine. Maybe I'll just call him up and tell him what we're going to do.
I like that, okay? He's trying to get a little laugh out of the audience, too. Danny, how much is this going to hurt Alabama that they're losing their offensive coordinator, Lane Kiffin, the week of the national championship game?
It's tough to say how much it'll hurt, but it's definitely going to play a factor no matter what way you look at it. I know Nick Saban tries to act focused, and I know in that soundbite he tries to act like it's not a big deal. But when you lose one of your main assistants the week of the biggest game of the year, it's going to have a factor. And I know Steve Sarkisian, he's going to be the OC. I know that maybe they have a similar mindset, but in the end, you get into games like this, and you don't know how he's going to react if things don't go right. And it definitely creates a little chink in the armor. And I think that's the issue. And I'm not saying their offense will definitely struggle, but like we talked about, Jalen Hurts, he's not the most consistent player. They can run the ball effectively, but who knows if they can do it against a defense like Clemson. And I think the whole thing is just kind of imploded on them because you knew when they took Lane Kiffin and Saban and already kind of had shouting matches throughout the season, but I think there was always a respect. Saban was the boss, and he's the best coach in the country, one of the best all time. But for this to happen, I think there was definitely a falling out between the two that he was supposed to finish up here before he went to Florida Atlantic, and now it's done. I still think in the end it's about their defense still being Alabama's defense. And if their defense does what it normally does, they'll be fine. But if they get put into a game where maybe Clemson has figured out some holes in Alabama's defense and they have to score a little more than they're used to. I don't know how much I trust their offense right now. Now, that said, I don't think any of us thought their defense would be quite as good without Kirby Smart, but they actually got better.
Oh, I agree,
Well,
I agree with that, yeah.
Bob,
Go ahead.
Bama rushed the ball 50 rushes against Washington for 269 yards. Clemson rushed 48 times for 205 yards. I believe these teams are going to have to throw the ball to beat each other. I don't think they're going to be able to grind out the running game like they did in their semifinal games to just control the clock and do that. I think that's where the big advantage to me seems to go to Clemson with Deshaun Watson. I think he's a more prolific passer. What's your thoughts, Bob? How is Clemson going to knock off Alabama?
Well, no, I think you hit the nail on the head right there. I think it's going to come down to Deshaun Watson making big plays and avoiding big turnovers. I think he threw a red zone pick in the game last week. And getting back to who I talked about, Mike Williams. Hunter Renfrow had a huge game against him last year. The tight end Leggett had a huge game against Alabama last year. You throw in Deion Kane and you throw in Gallup out of the backfield, and I mean, Deshaun Watson's got weapons, but it comes down, can he make the plays? Because that's where it starts. Can he make the plays? Can he make the throws? Can the offensive line keep him upright? Can they run the ball enough to be able to set up the play action pass? So I think it comes down to the offensive line of Clemson, and can Deshaun Watson make plays? Because as both Danny and I both said, both of those defenses are knockouts. So, and I don't have a lot of confidence in Jalen Hurts' ability to make big plays in big games. And then getting back to the offensive coordinator type of situation, I don't know that you generally an offensive coordinator has a good feel for his players and their skill set and the things that they can do in certain situations. And I'm not sure that Sarkisian is familiar enough with the Alabama team to say, oh yeah, you can do this, you can do that. Your best play is this. So that may come into a factor as well.
Bob, who are you picking to win? I'll let Danny pick after you. Who do you like in this
Tigers.
game?
Go Tigers.
Danny?
Danny, Tigers.
Who do you like?
Oh, I gotta stick with Bama, guys. I know Clemson played very well, and they deserve it, but when you play Alabama, it's just a different story. I think this is a game that's tight early on, maybe even is tied at halftime. Maybe Clemson has a lead, but I think Alabama pulls away in the second half. And I don't know what the spread is. I think it's kind of tight. I expect Alabama to cover yet again. I think their defense is what's going to win them this game, and I think their defense is going to continue to dominate. I think even though Clemson's they have more weapons, I don't know if they're quite as in sync as they were last year, despite how good they looked in that first game. And I definitely think Alabama's a better team than they were last year.
Well, I would say this: Clemson was leading that game in the fourth quarter last year, so I'm hoping that they're leading at the end of the fourth quarter this year. So.
Well, fellas, listen, I can tell you one thing. Yeah, very good. Bob, I can tell you one thing. I don't think there's going to be 95 points scored in the game, so I'm going to go with the under, okay? I like Clemson to win the game myself. More importantly, I like the under. I think this is going to be a low-scoring defensive battle. I don't think it's going to get up into the 30s. His first team to maybe 29, 28 is going to win the game, but it should be a fantastic game, fellas. I'm really glad you came on and discussed the game with us here, and last week you did a very good job. We all picked Alabama to win, and Bob and I picked Clemson. Danny picked Ohio State. And Danny's going with Alabama. So, Danny, if Alabama wins, we're all even after this. So you did a good – you played the odds there very well, Dan. So I want to thank Danny Reiter. And you can follow Danny on Twitter at SportsWriter number 12. Fellas, thank you for joining me. The 10th inning will be back here. We're going to preview the NFL Wild Card Weekend. Thanks for joining us today on the 10th inning.